Welcome to another edition of the MDM podcast. I'm Mike Hockett, our executive editor. Distributors of all kinds are trying to find the right marketing formula that caters to both their suppliers and customers, and the digital age has made it much more interesting and complicated. Marketing is the broad topic in this episode's discussion with Alan Hale, who is the president of Consite Marketing Group, which helps B2B distributors and manufacturers conduct actionable market research to gain voice of the customer insights. Hale's passion for this topic was evident in our discussion as I asked him what grinds his gears when it comes to distributors' marketing efforts, and he had plenty to say on that and didn't mince words in doing so. We also dove into the relationship between distributors and manufacturers and the points of friction in that dynamic, including what each side wishes the other did better, as well as the key difference between customer data and customer insights. Enjoy. Well, Alan, thanks for taking the time to join the MDM podcast.
Appreciate being invited. Thank you.
All right. Well, I lightly touched on your current role and your background in the intro to this podcast, but can you share a little bit more as far as a bio of sorts for you and Consite Marketing Group with our audience?
Sure. I am almost solely in B2B marketing. I do market research and consulting. I've worked with a couple consulting groups, a couple research groups. Consite's been in existence since February 2015. All total, I probably have over 250 projects that I've managed, which makes me an old guy. A lot of these projects were helping companies in business-to-business marketing grow their market share or enter new markets with distribution. So I've had experience with companies trying to get into distribution. I've also worked a little bit on the other side, although not as much, with distributors and some of the issues they have with manufacturers. So have learned a lot of things that we can explore, but that's where I am. I'm really more of a business to business consulting and research. And I think what sets us different as a company is we believe very much in actionable research. If it's not actionable, it doesn't result in insights and you acting on them. I think our philosophy is don't do it. Save yourself the money, the hassle. So for those that truly want to understand customers and outflank their competition, start with the customer. So hopefully that wasn't too long-winded.
No, that's great. And I like that your perspective here does come from both sides, helping distributors and manufacturers. So having that perspective is pretty critical here. Well, marketing is a giant topic that we provide a lot of thought leadership about here on MDM, but most of that content is comprised of best practices and sort of here's how you can do this better kind of content. And we don't often discuss what distributors are doing wrong, specifically on the marketing side. So I'm going to ask you that broad question of what do you think distributors are doing wrong with their marketing? Or in another way, what do you see distributors do on the marketing side that just grinds your gears right now?
Wow. What do you have, an hour? Okay. I'll mention four things that concern me a lot. And
Sure.
I've done some thinking on some of them, not sure how to address a lot of them. But so first of all, where I see the manufacturer and the distributor in an alliance, a true partnership alliance, everything being equal, they beat the competition. But it seems to be now in the market going through distributors from both the manufacturer side and the distributor side, it seems like a war. They don't recognize the other party's ability to influence the equation. They don't like to share point of sale data. They don't share marketing. And it's just a strange phenomena that I think needs to be addressed. So, if as a manufacturer, if you don't pick the distributor that you can trust, you shouldn't have them as a distributor. Conversely, when the distributor needs to understand what support they need from the manufacturer, and how to get it. Some cases it might be a little bit of technical support. Some cases it might be some market research. But I know I'm not on video here, but I just see this constant fighting. And I haven't seen that change a lot through the years. So the next point, I'll just start in a general scheme that I think B2C is decades ahead of B2B in many things, but especially in getting customer insights. They have ethnography, they have focus groups, they talk. In B2B, I heard a frightening statistic from Bain Consulting that only 21% of companies in B2B obtain and act on insights. So 1 in 5 are getting insights. And I have a feeling in the distributors, it's much less. So there's a need to understand the customer, what I'll just call insights. Where are they? How do they buy from you? What is the buy scenario? How do they want to be serviced before, during, and after the sale transaction? And I can't make a blanket statements, but I don't see much of this going on with distribution. I see it more being product focused, advertising, web-based. And I know it could sound like a hammer in search of a nail, but if you don't understand customer insights, you're just guessing. And so I think there's a hierarchy, B2C, then B2B, then within B2B, the worst companies I see are either small companies, new tech companies, or distributors. And I'm sure some distributors are doing this okay. So for the few that are, don't take offense, but I just don't see a lot of this.
Yeah, and especially in this world where now so many customers are doing 70% of the buying experience digitally before they even get to the point of sale, or they're doing 70% of that experience before they interact with a salesperson in any form. So it seems like, distributors are now at the point where they should be relying on that customer insight data to take them the rest of the way to close that remaining 30%. So to hear those statistics out there, like you said, it definitely is kind of frightening, and it should be an eye opener for, I think, a lot of people currently in distribution.
The 70%, I've heard even up to 80%, but pick a number. It's a large, but there's two parts of this, and I think you hit the second part is how do they handle it after contact? I would even go back to the first part is, are they giving the customer what they want on this digital journey so that they can make a decision? Right. Because what I've seen in B2B buying is exactly what you just said is, first they identify, do they have a problem? Is it big enough they want to change? Then what are solutions out there? And then they kind of go look at digital footprints, from manufacturers or distributors or whatever. Who can best solve this problem? So who's credible? How do you prove you're credible? Because anyone can raise their hand and say anything. And then there's another thing in B2B that on top of all this, I believe it's more logically driven, but I believe the one big emotion is don't screw up. Make sure you don't make a bad decision for the company. Now that kind of depends. If it's copy paper, not a big deal. If it's a big CRM solution or ERP, enterprise resource planning, and you make the wrong solution, you'll be at another job, hopefully. So those are two things. If I can go on to this, the third is, sure. I struggle with distributors, especially smaller distributors who don't add value or don't think about adding value. And I think those distributors over time either lose to larger distributors or lose to companies that'll sell direct. Because if it's just a computer to computer transaction, why go through all this stuff? So you need to understand, again, going back to customer insights, what do they want? How can we achieve excellence in those attributes? And I've read a fascinating thing from Harvard Business Review that most companies will kind of match the competition on everything. Well, we've got to be on par. And what they have said, and I've preached in a less sophisticated manner over a long time, is that find those attributes that really matter to the customer and don't match the competition, but blow them out of the water. Don't score a 10, score 50, on the top 3 to 5 things. And yet I don't see that being done by anyone. And then the last point, and we can dig into this further, is I made that point about B2C versus B2B earlier. I think it also holds true for social media. B2C, they seem to understand the rhythm, build a story. So what I see in B2B is first, not as much activity. Then I see it more structured. Maybe there's a post from the CEO that comes out once in a while. Then when they do have something on there, and this has a lot of sand in my gears to go after your earlier comment. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of product features. Now,
yeah,
it's not benefits. And there's a famous HBR editor of years ago, Ted Levitt, who said people don't buy drills, they buy drill holes. So you have to understand the benefit. And I see distributors among the worst, not all of them, but among the worst, is saying, here, look at our products, and they just lay them out. Or we have a brand new product that does something faster RPM or this or that. Why does the customer care? I mean, again, in my mind, it all starts from the customer. What are they looking at? What are their, what are the criteria if they're going to switch brands and this and that? So bottom line is, I think both B2B and distributors have a long way to go. And I would encourage them, go out and spend some money and get a social media czar or whatever you want to call them, and help them craft their message, craft the communications, and tell a story. Not, here, I got a brand new product and it's got 7 keys instead of 6. Who cares?
And yeah, that social media angle is kind of the next point I wanted to bring up here, and you already touched on some of this, but it has been fascinating to see how many distributors are or aren't leveraging social media as a marketing tool out there. And certainly most of the main, the primary social media channels, which are usually LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, even TikTok and Snapchat out there, a lot of them have paid options for even better visibility, but there's also so much company marketing you can do with these channels without paying a cent. And it's just interesting to watch how there are some small distributors that are very present on social media, whether it's the company posting as a whole or it's individual executives being highly visible on social media out there, telling the company's story and what they're up to. They're posting every day, while their competitors and some even mid-sized and large distributors might barely have a presence out there on social media. So yeah, you already kind of went into this, but I was going to see what your thoughts were on what is working and not working in B2B social media.
Yeah, and again, I'll just preface this. I'm not an expert on social media. I can just tell you what I see. So the first thing is, there's kind of like this deluxe. I'm really, really smart. I'm in all these platforms. I don't even think they're doing the basics on LinkedIn, on B2B. So again, I don't see enough posting. One thing, I'm working with a client now that they don't do any posting at all. And I'm pushing, like, you need to have your top executives post, and you really need to have everyone in the company post. I mean, LinkedIn is about, in my opinion, personality and relationships, right? It's trust. I trust these guys. I'll call them when I have a need. But when you're not on there, who do these people call? They call the competition. They call, other distributors. And I don't want to single out names here, but I see large distributors that I just don't understand what they're trying to do on LinkedIn. I just don't understand it. We have a million SKUs. That's great. How does that help me specifically? And so right. I kind of go back as I think B2B, and maybe I'm straying from this topic a little bit, but I think B2B is more selling than marketing, unfortunately.
Mhm.
And especially in the distribution level, even in the user level, what I found from talking to some smart friends of mine is the VP of sales and marketing 80% of the time has come up through the sales side.
Hmm.
They don't understand marketing. When sales requirements go on, they pull an arrow out of their quiver, and it's usually cracking the whip harder, build your funnel, always
Yeah.
be closing, all that great stuff. And the funny part is, I don't blame the VP of sales and marketing. I blame the company.
Hmm.
Why haven't you trained them, sent them to an executive MBA class, have a marketing mentor that you have a relationship that they can get them up the learning curve? Because I'm just telling you, if you get the whip cracked on you, you're not selling enough generators. Telling your salespeople to sell harder to the Amish segment isn't going to cut it. So
Yeah.
you kind of need everything to work together. So and then once you've got LinkedIn, you've got other media, as you mentioned, TikTok, depending on your brand, Facebook.
Hmm.
I just don't see these people at all. I mean,
Yeah.
and I can't remember the last time I saw a distributor post on any social media. I mean, I'm sure they're there,
Mhm.
but I just don't see them.
I keep hearing and seeing how there's a lot of distributors that seem to be rebranding themselves as solutions providers more than just product providers, and that is an effective tactic. But I'm not seeing them doing that rebranding so much on social media. Like you said, it is just a lot of product posts, product features, but it's not about, here's how this product can save you time or do something at the job site that you're not doing before. So yeah, there's definitely some things that work on B2C social media that don't translate to B2B. But overall, it is kind of surprising at this point, in 2023 to see just how little engagement there still is on the distribution side of social media marketing, given that, like I said, so much of it is free marketing out there that it seems like there's just so much more potential that these distributors could be using it for.
So you mentioned a good point, Mike, on being a solution provider. Well, that does differentiate you from other, what I'll just call commodity line distributors.
Yeah.
But first thing is, if no one knows about it,
Mm-hmm.
no one's going to be, take any action. The second thing is you have to communicate it. And again, going to your point earlier, why is this of value to you? Well, and I'm making all this up here, but we can make sure your production line never goes down.
Yeah. It's important.
That's I think more interesting than we've got over 2 million products, SKUs now. So, whatever, and then on the positioning side, it goes back to, okay, this is what you want to be. Do the customers agree you can be?
Right.
And I'll just go. So if I'm designing new products and I'm an engineer, I want to talk to another engineer, probably of the manufacturing company. Never mind where wind up buying them, but I want to make sure the specs are right. So you have to look at this whole holistic process. And I don't think many people do this well in B2B or in distribution or small companies. It's all about what's going to come in the next quarter. So it's just a strange world. The more marketing tactics and activities that are available, the less people spend on relationships and insights.
Yeah.
Now we're expecting Chat GPT to be the marketer, to write compelling messages, and maybe someday it'll get there. But it seems like I've got grandkids, and it seems like watching what people do is like opening Christmas gifts during Christmas. They play from box to box, and never kind of do anything other than that. And I believe that being a good marketer is being an effective marketer, not just being a busy marketer. Anyone can be busy, right? But it's what you accomplish. And, and again, basing this off from what the customer wants rather than what you think they want. So right. I know everyone is making that same mistake, but just because others are making it doesn't excuse you from not being a better marketer.
I know that, especially on the small distributor side, they might not have the budget, the bandwidth to hire a specific social media coordinator. It's usually whoever's handling their marketing duties is also doing the social media posting for the company. So I get that, yeah, there might be limited resources there, but there definitely, like we covered, are some best practices that they can follow when they are making those social media posts that definitely go beyond and are more effective than just posting product data out there or
Yeah,
just product features. So
and have everyone post.
yeah,
I mean, a lot of this is personality, but so you don't want to micromanage these people. You want to let the personality come out, but you want to set some broad guardrails.
yeah,
So they're not like trashing products that your company makes or something. But it's just, as you said, it's free, at least in cost, maybe not time.
sure,
But where I've seen some clients is, okay, they've had this problem. It's like, if you have 20 employees, each of you are required to make a weekly post or a bi-weekly post, and we're going to grade you on that in terms of evaluation. That is, it just can't be one person's job to market and get the word out. It's got to be the
yeah,
entire organization. So if you have and I'm making this up again, if you have a 20-person company and all 20 are very active, and you have a 500-person organization and hardly no one posts, or it's just a CEO once in a while, from a communication point of view, the smaller company has an advantage. And it's the same thing with distributors, so you got the corporate level, and then you've got all the branches. Well, why
yeah,
aren't more people, this, and I love stories. I love, we had a customer and they had a problem. We went out within 2 hours, had them back up and, do all that. That to me is interesting. Not buy more of my something,
yeah,
I mean, and we're getting to the point now where products can be available anywhere,
yeah.
direct, Amazon, a lot of cases, Lowe's, Home Depot, so you have to have a niche, and you have to add value. I know we keep talking about that, but it seems important to me.
And I know we've talked about social media with the sales and marketing side of things, but also with just the labor side right now with distributors. They're consistently telling us in surveys that they're still struggling to find and retain talent. I mean, social media is a great tool to use as a recruiting tool, as a job posting tool. So especially if you're a smaller distributor that might only have a single or just a couple of locations, you can get really specific with the details of what it's like to have a day in the life at that job location. So I definitely wanted to touch on the job and the recruitment side that distributors can be leveraging social media for. And again, just like with sales marketing, there are some distributors that I do see consistently posting job updates, openings, and full details about them. But there's plenty of other distributors that I know are struggling for talent that aren't using social media as a way to combat that.
There again, it shouldn't just be the HR person
Yeah,
writing job specs. And I think, Mike, there's a spectrum. I mean, doing anything is maybe step one, listing job openings step two, but it doesn't tell you about the culture of the company.
yeah,
It doesn't tell you, we're growing, we're shrinking, all that. And I have friends of mine now that are bounced out of work. So the first thing they do is they look on LinkedIn and looked at, what comments are on this company,
yeah,
and you get people there. Second thing they do is they look at Glassdoor, a site that tells you not only salary, but what it was actually to work in there. And so people are getting a lot pickier now.
oh yeah,
That first of all, you have some people want to work remote and all that, but people just don't want to jump into a company and assume it's going to turn out all right. They want to know, and especially, I think these younger millennial, whatever you want to call them, it has to kind of fit. The best case is, they're challenged, they're promotable, they align with a objective that's bigger than themselves or the company. Like we are making the planet green or something, turns these people on more than you will spend 7 hours pick and packing
right.
from the warehouse in there. So again, it's what do you want to be? What do you want to communicate? What are the best ways to communicate? And The other thing is I get this worry about perfection. If I'm not perfect in social media, if I'm not
Right.
perfect in doing customer research, I'm not going to do it. And I've had this discussion with some of my colleagues. It's like, just get started. Your
Yeah.
heart surgeon doesn't start off by being the best in the world on the first heart surgery. You need experience, you need practice, but get out there and start it. I mean, nothing is going to change unless the culture of an organization changes, or the marketer, the CEO pushes to change that organization. It'll all be the same. And the sad part is, I see a lot of, and a lot better than I do on this, but I see a lot of distributor consolidations. I see a lot of losing sales direct to manufacturers, and you don't have a lot of time to play. you
No.
know, you have to be successful and get the wheel going, or you may not be around. And we used to call these people where I work distributors that had two cars in a ship, two cars in a boat. There was no desire to change. They just wanted to take money out of the business, which is fine if it's a family business, maybe not like Succession. But so, it's if you want an ongoing business, you have to evolve with the time. You have to evolve with social media. You have to evolve with marketing. And if you can't do everything, if you can't do all these marketing activities at once because you said you have a small department, pick the one or two that you think you'll get a lot of benefits. Start there, drive those, and eventually add. Because
Yeah.
I would rather have a company do 1, 2, or 3 things very, very well than 30 things very, very mediocre.
Yeah.
And and so you have to kind of watch out. Is this where I want to put my resources against? Is this the lever of the company? And if it's not, we revisit it downstream.
Yeah. Quickly getting back to the point about recruiting and using job postings on there. If I'm a millennial or Gen Z candidate today looking for a job, and the first thing I do after I see the job posting, the job description, I'm going to go check out that company's social media. I'm going to go get its LinkedIn, its Twitter, its Facebook, try to get some sort of feel for the company based on its postings out there. And if a company is just not active on those channels, that just gives me all the more reason to bypass it and go to the next company, which might be a competitor. It's just one of those ways to let candidates know that you are out there, that give them an idea of what it's like to work at that company. And having, like you said, something out there is better than nothing at all.
In your example, by doing very little or nothing, so first of all, you get a smaller pool of talent.
Yeah.
Right. So instead of having, let's say the market, you could have 300, and again, I'm making this up, 300 people apply, you've got 10. And you could make an argument that the better of those 300 are off and running and evaluating other companies. So, and you don't know what you don't know. You don't know who hasn't talked to you, who you're missing out. So yeah, I mean, it's social media is for growing your company, positioning, communicating to customers, prospects, but it's also internal hiring, and should there be an internal communication newsletter that goes to employees?
Yeah.
Some companies have it, some don't. So we're really kind of getting to the point now where you can't ignore these things.
Social media is just one piece of the overall marketing puzzle here. And I know that you and the Consite Marketing Group have, like you said, a lot of experience with the voice of the customer research and marketing practices, advising both manufacturers and distributors. So I did want to explore a little bit more of that relationship of the, that never-ending effort to reduce or minimize friction between the two. And marketing can be a source of potential friction. So I want to get your thoughts on, what do distributors wish manufacturers did better or differently on the marketing front that might help that relationship overall?
Well, I think first is alignment of strategy and be recognized as a valued partner, because when you don't think you're that, then there's constant infighting. The second and again, this is just my perception, but ease of doing business. When you make it difficult to return products that don't sell in 18 months and you chew up capital, when you fight for something on a PO, let's say damage quality, and it goes like 3 months, 4 months, it's a problem. And I've told manufacturers, if you are 10% of a customer or distributor's sales, and you are 40 or 50% of the problems, you have a problem. Unless you have a proprietary product, they're going to be looking to replace you. Maybe not this year, maybe it goes through a contract. So that's one set. And then I think another thing, and again, I'm just thinking this out loud a little bit, but lay out expectations for each. What do we want Mr. Manufacturer to do to help us as a distributor to sell the products? Okay. And then vice versa, what does the manufacturer want the distributor to do? Now, I tell you, I won't get too detailed in this, but I think one mistake the manufacturers make is assuming the distributor will sell every single product they've got. And again, going back to this, if I have 1 million SKUs, I cannot sell each product. I can respond when a customer asks. If it's a major product line like conduit in a gray bar, okay, I may ask the contractor, do you need conduit? But I'm not going to ask them, do you need light switches? Do you need this, and this? I mean, they're just not going to do that. So I think, again, and sometimes I've had to mediate some of these things, is what's realistic. If you really think you have a product that's less than 0.5% of their sales, and they're going to devote time into an account trying to sell that, you're crazy. So I think part of it is the manufacturer has to be much better in marketing the brand name, making it more aware, the position in the marketplace, identifying a target audience. Most products fit certain customer segments better. Go back to the generators to the Amish people. That's not what you would pick as your ideal customer segment. So the manufacturer needs to share some of these learnings with the distributor so that they don't have to, it would be nice if you called a brand new processor and said, oh, they need product X and Y, not C and D, from some type of profile. Mm-hmm. So I look at this in terms of working together, teamwork. I also look at this a little bit more complicated, but generally, from the manufacturer's point of view, if there's no conflict, you don't have enough outlets. No, you don't. I mean, I'll go back as I've had projects like in Chicago, they need 9 locations and they pick 3. And then they don't understand why their market share is a third of what they thought it would be. So on the other hand, you can get channel conflict that's so destructive that the distributor will stop presenting that product because I present it to you and then you shop it and you buy it at somewhere else. So I think there's some guidelines depending how important your product is, but 10 to 15% seems reasonable to me. 30% seems destructive. 0% seems like you haven't done a good enough job, Mr. Manufacturer. And I'll give you another kind of side of this is in the electric power tool industry, there are people called STAFTA, specialty tool and fastener distributors. They sell multiple lines of multiple brands of portable electric power tools, Milwaukee, Skill, Bosch, all that. Yep. And there are manufacturers that say, well, I'm not going to sell to these people because they carry competitive brands. And it's right. Like, you just shot yourself in the foot, if not higher. Because a lot of, well, I'm keeping this clean, but a lot of contractors go to these STAFTA because a couple reasons. They can look at any brand, they can feel the brands in their hand and make a decision, and they do repair work. So, and I don't know the number, but years ago, it used to be STAFTA would have 20% of the market. So if you're not into that 20% in the channels, you don't play there. So you have no share in the 20. So you're trying to make it up in the 80. The biggest advantage I see going through a distributor, there's a lot, breaking bulk, all this stuff. It's convenient shopping. It's like a consumer will go to a grocery store and they don't buy milk at one place, bread at another place. And so when you're in there, you have a chance to be looked at. And then it's up to the manufacturing, marketing, and promotion, and maybe point of sale merchandising to see if you get considered. But if you're not in there, you're not in there. So I don't understand all this. And I'll just use like Home Depot and Lowe's. Well, I'm going to sell to Home Depot, but not Lowe's. There are certain people that like Lowe's. There's certain people that like Home Depot. If you want to reach them both, you need to be in both. I mean, it's just, and I think somehow a lot of this is turned emotional. It's not based on facts. It's based on gut reactions. And I don't know. It's a little bit of a sad place to be, because I just see the relationships being less and less, and, more buying on computers, more, if that's the way it is for some products, that's the way it is. But I don't think it has to be that way.
It definitely does seem to be getting more and more complicated out there, when a lot of it maybe doesn't have to be. And you touched on this earlier, but another potential source of friction between distributors and manufacturers is that point of sale data and the unwillingness to share that between parties out there. And it stands to reason that distribution sales staff would greatly benefit from getting that point of sales data from manufacturers and then leveraging it to gain more business from those same customers. But that point of sales information, like we said, it's not something that all manufacturers are happy to give away. So anything further on that point of contention there, and any advice on how either side there can navigate that with that point of sales data?
Yeah, I mean, so there's a couple things here. Let me start out with this success story, and I'll just use a retailer instead of, quote, a distributor. The people that make diapers, whether Procter and Gamble or whatever, they share back and forth data from Walmart real time, because they've got these RFID, it's just, and they understand what's going on in Cincinnati, and there's some other cases like that. The problem is on the point of sale, the distributors, I think, are afraid the manufacturers are going to go direct. I know all these, I know the characteristics, and I know that. And again, without understanding why customers buy, you're kind of are at a disadvantage. So I think the first thing is you can promise the distributor, and we'll back up on this a second, that you're going to use the data. It's going to be proprietary. You won't share it with anyone, and you won't use it to sell direct. Okay. Now, depending on the trust between these two, they may or may not believe that. So it's not an easy thing, Mike, to solve. I mean, I still think it goes back to trust.
Yeah.
And we can talk about this later or now or whatever, but this issue of selling direct is a big deal. And distributors hate it. And I'm going to say something that's probably not going to be liked by your audience. There are some customers that want to buy direct. And it could be because they want the same pricing all across the country in their different branches. It can be they want the lowest price. It can be they don't need certain services. So if you, and I'm saying you as the manufacturer and the distributor, do not attack that market, probably the manufacturer. If you don't attack that market, the customer will wind up buying direct from someone else. Now, that is the exception, not the rule, thank God, right? So, distributors have other things they can offer. If I'm a roofing distributor, I can get these shingles to the roof of your house, so the contractor have to run up and down a ladder bringing bundles of shingles. I mean, I've watched some of these guys, and God, I wouldn't do that for the amount of money in the world. So I think I really think it's trust, showing them how it's useful, trying it. But it's when you have that agreement, like the diapers and Walmart, it's not a manufacturer anymore. It's an alliance from beginning to end, right? And and most products don't have that. So, and I would say it probably starts with the manufacturer sharing their point of sale data or their market research data. Here's our target market. Here's why they buy our brand. Here's the concerns. Here's what they look like. And then showing the distributor so that they could focus their outbound and inbound selling effort on communicating to those people and reaching new prospects. But it's not an easy thing to solve. There's no magic wand that says, as of May 15th, everything's going to be shared. There's just, it goes back to trust. And I think that goes back to senior management of the manufacturer talking to the wholesaler or distributor. We support you. Here's what we want to do. And how can we serve you better, Mr. Distributor? We want to serve our customer, but what are we doing wrong that needs to change? I had an example once where a bottle manufacturer was selling through a distributor, and it happened to be a client. They were arguing over a $10,000 invoice because they were claiming that it wasn't up to quality standards. And they were buying like a couple million a year. This is a very, very large distributor. And I'm sitting there going, what is wrong with you people? Just take the credit. I mean, why are we giving them another reason to hate us? Yeah. And so I just think people get wrapped up in emotions or their department. Oh my gosh, it's going to hit our P&L this quarter. Or I mean, it's like let's just do the right thing. We don't want to be taken advantage of, but we are here to be easy to do business with, support you, and I'll just say manufacturers don't understand the role of distribution. They just don't. They think they do, but they don't.
Well, I know we covered a lot of ground here on this whole dynamic between the relationship between manufacturers and distributors and the potential sources of conflict and friction. Anything else that you want to share here with our audience of distribution executives before we wrap up?
Yeah, I will say there's a lot of issues here, but I think in my mind, the two issues that are the most important is understanding the relationship with the manufacturer and having your distributor top management talk to their distributor top management. Are we aligned? What needs to happen? And I know some of these distributors are smaller, but they need to either have access to market research done or do some of their own. And I'm not talking, Mike, about a 6-month study. I am talking about go out and talk to 20 customers. What do they like? What don't they like about you, Mr. Distributor? The other problem I see, the people that are dabbling in CX, customer experience, be it manufacturers or distributors, it's scores, it's vanity metrics. It's not how do we improve. So go, I challenge the distributors, go talk to 20 customers. And the other side is I would team up the discussions with a manager and a salesperson, because in a lot of times the salesperson's defensive. Yeah. They're not trained to sell. They're not trained to do market research. They're trained to sell, or they're trained to hunt or farm or whatever you want to say. Mm-hmm. And there's an opportunity here that can get you above, give you a competitive advantage over other distribution, and just start. You don't have to have 45 questions. Just go out and talk to them. I mean, yeah. And you know what? They're going to tell you what they like. They're going to tell you what they don't like, and they're going to tell you what to fix. It's called VOC, voice of the customer, not DOC, which can be Department of Corrections, or data of the customer. So data is great. It makes things more robust, but it starts with insights. And the thing that drives me bananas is the CX group measuring every transaction, every interaction, but they don't change anything. It's like, I get surveys I have a Potbelly sandwich once a week. Every week I get a request to have a survey. For me, as long as it's hot it's sanitary and there's no broken glass in there, I'm fine, and I just don't think it buys them anything. So I think we do need to divert some resources into insights. And the data part is great, but without insights, data is just a bunch of numbers. It doesn't give you the whys. It doesn't give you what to do. So I'm in a quandary. This more and more data, more and more. Give me more cuts, and I'll just say, what are you doing with it? How are you changing your behavior? So the worst case is I could be wrong. You go to 20 people. I knew all that. Okay, that's insurance. I bet you don't. And I bet when you think you know what your customers want, that is the first step in the path to oblivion. You just cannot assume. You got to know what they want, how you're compared to your competitors, all sorts of stuff. But it starts with the desire to put the customer first, be customer obsessed. And I think distributors actually do a better job of maintaining support for the account, but they haven't ratcheted up a notch in terms of, okay, they're satisfied, but how can we make them delighted? How can we make them raving fan?
Well, that's great. And I think if our audience may be able to pick up on, I feel like we could have turned this into a 3-hour podcast and still had plenty to talk about here.
Or a 3-hour monologue, right? So, I mean, when you got me on the pulpit, I just really am trying to avoid marketing malpractice, where people doing the same thing over and over and not getting anything. And a lot has to change, both from the C-level and the boards and the marketing people to try to fix this thing. I mean, it's out of control.
Alan Hale, thanks for your time today and stopping by the MDM podcast.
I appreciate it, Mike. Enjoyed the dialogue. Maybe think about a lot of things, some of which I've thought about, some of which I had to think a little bit harder now. But anyway, thank you. And I hope this was of some value to your audience.